Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to Harry and Jen Do Horror with Friends. On this podcast, we pick current horror films to analyze, critique, and use as a springboard for further discussion. This week, we are joined by Steve Elfenbein to talk about Smile 2, starring Naomi Scott and directed by Parker Finn. We discuss mental health, water-chugging, addiction, heavy-handed narratives, and the cursed film trope. It is a great conversation. You should know that on this podcast, we completely spoil our movies, so if you have not seen Smile 2 yet, be sure to check that out first. As always, if you have a minute, we welcome ratings and reviews on the podcast streaming service of your choice. However, the best is when people actually share these episodes with their horror enthusiast friends. We would love your help growing the show in any way you like if you have the time. If you have a friend who saw Smile 2, send this little ditty along to them, will you? Next month, we will talk about Nosferatu, directed by Robert Eggers and starring Bill Skarsgård, Lily Rose Depp, and Willem Dafoe. Nosferatu is a remake of the classic 1922 film about a vampiric menace in a small German town. We've had that one on the agenda for a while, and I am so pumped to be getting down to it. Be on the lookout also for a bonus episode on the OG Nosferatu coming out in the meantime. For now, here's Steve to talk about Smile 2.
That point where the dancers are there and the fist goes down her throat. She's getting fisted in the throat.
Yeah. I mean, who among us hasn't been there, right?
Yeah,
Sorry,
exactly.
Continue.
It's like a Saturday afternoon. I'm Jen Lightfoot. I'm an artist and tattoo artist, and over the weekend I went to an Alanis Morissette covers show, and it was actually really good. The lead singer was great. Yeah.
Did she nail the yeah?
Yeah, she did. Yeah, she did nail that. The drummer, not so much, but she was great. She was awesome.
Was this like a small town show, or was it like a touring Alanis cover band?
I actually don't know. It was a pretty nice venue. It was a friend of mine's friend owned the venue, and it was really cute. Really nice. I don't know about the band though, if they were local or not local. Apparently, the lead singer, I think, also fronts a Counting Crows cover band, which I would love to hear a female-fronted Counting Crows cover band. I feel like that would be awesome.
That would be awesome, except that I would then feel like I need to compete with that person and claim the lead singer role of this Counting Crows cover band. Sign me up. I'm Harry Nichols. I am a singer-songwriter. I am an English teacher. And just to give you a sense of my media delay in my life, I experienced things about 3 months late, after everything the hype is over. So I just watched Wicked over the weekend. I don't know if have y'all seen Wicked?
Yeah.
Yep. If my wife asks, I absolutely loved it. But yes,
got you. Well, but I had a dad joke for you all, which was that I finally saw Wicked. More like defying brevity. Am I right?
I support you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. All right, we have a friend here. Friend, introduce yourself.
Hi. So my name is Steve. I am the alcohol and other drug counselor at Colgate. So I work in what is referred to as the Wellness Institute, and then I also do therapy. And I guess
you provide therapy or you go to therapy?
Both. Probably need to do both more, I guess. And I'm really just excited to be here. So thrilled to just talk about movies at any chance that I get. I guess if we're doing a cool thing, my wife and I are are both moving and expecting a baby in July. So I don't know what my movie watching is going to look like in the future, but I did see this movie 3 times in preparation. So we'll see what we'll see what the letterbox looks like at the end of the year.
You've spent a collective 9 hours on Smile 2.
Yeah.
So that's very funny. Yes, get ready for your letterbox to get fucked. It's going to be really different. Every now and then I like that my Spotify Wrapped is in no way a representation of who I am. It's like a couple things that I'm into and then mostly what my kids do. So a lot of like Bluey on there and stuff. Yeah. And the Disney's Descendants. I don't know. Ward that shit off for as long as you can. Just trust me. Steve, how do we know each other? How are we friends? Maybe you could tell the story.
Yeah. So the story is that I somehow won the lottery and met Laura, who has known Harry and Kat for I think like 15 or 20 years, and I just have been really lucky enough to get to know all of you through my wife and spend time with your kids and attend a birthday party or two and a Harry Nichols band performance. And you also were the guitar man at our wedding, where by request you did play Sweet Calypso, even though I think Laura did refer to that as one of the top 5 moments of the wedding. So,
oh my God, that's wild. Yeah, no, it was so fun playing your wedding, and that was a really fun ride home from what you're referring to there. As we're riding back from the venue, we're all in this bus, and I had my guitar on me, and I was like, I really want to play the guitar and sing on the bus. And like, am I going to be like the obnoxious guitar guy if I do that? Is that terrible? And
no.
Kat was like, no, do it. And I'm glad that that's how it came off.
No, it was
off as obnoxious drunk guitar guy.
It was perfect. And you also saved my friends from embarrassment, because I think at one point they were like smashing the keys on a piano that was there, and they were like, and then Harry just like came over and just kind of saved us from ourselves. So no, the really beautiful thing about this is that the music connection that you and Laura and Laura's sister Maureen and her brother-in-law Austin, and you all share that with Kat, and that was really special.
Oh yeah, well, we're glad to have you in the fam, man.
Happy to be here. And Claire plays the bassoon too, so I got to give a shout out to Claire with that too. Don't want to forget that.
Yeah. That's what I imagine a bassoon. That's my estimation of like a. Yeah. Anyway, cool. So we are here to discuss Smile Part 2. Steve, are you willing and able to summarize this movie for us?
If you would like me to, I would be. So I'm trying to. I have my notes here because I was like, I just need this to be like, I've seen it 3 times, so I don't want to go into too much because I know we get into it. But essentially, it picks up very, very quickly, like within the same week, at the conclusion of the first Smile. One of the things that like I do want to talk about is I would have liked to have spent more time with Joel, who's played by Kyle Gallner. I think he's fantastic. I think everything he does is awesome, and there's a part of me that wishes that was almost the entire movie. But then through a series of tragic events, our titular character Sky gets infected with the I guess like the Smile curse, if you will, and then it does, I guess, impact her world tour, and chaos ensues.
Wild. Yep. Wild. So up next we have analysis. Beautiful summary, by the way. Beautiful summary. Up next we have analysis. We normally try to pick at some of the deeper themes, meanings, and ideas of perspectives of the movie.
We try not to hop too far into critique, which is a problem of mine.
Yeah. Not a problem. Just a tendency. That's
just
all.
A tendency.
Just a tendency. Does anybody have any questions that you want to throw out there?
I did actually have a question. It doesn't really relate to any like theme. When I watched the first one, I thought this, and then when I watched the second one, I thought it again because there's a lot of similarities plot-wise between the two, and so it seems to be this what is it called? Pass it on trope, like curse type trope. But question I had, because while watching it, I was like, okay, so it's really giving me notes of like The Ring, It Follows, Sinister, Truth or Dare. I have never seen Countdown, but when I Googled it, that came up. Apparently it's terrible, but that's also one. But really, really, really gave me It Follows and The Ring vibes. And my question is, when is it ripping off those movies? Or when does it become its own genre? So is it its own genre now? Or
like curse subgenre, you mean?
Yeah, like the pass it on like type thing, like, you know, like not even really like a curse, but the fact that you'd have to like pass it on to somebody else in order to like get out of it or survive. Yeah, like is that a new genre that's coming around?
I really love that as like an entry point to this. I really loved the I guess the comparison to It Follows. It Follows was the movie that I thought of the most watching both 1 and 2 of this. And what I was trying to think about in my head is this like every it seems like every few years, and we're seeing this in a huge way right now with like the comic book like film explosion over the last like, you know, it's now been like close to 20 years. But just like there used to like be Westerns, and there were like specific types of movies that Hollywood sort of grapples onto. And one of the things that, just to dive in just a little bit to the critique stuff, but to sort of also like hold the line, is like every horror movie now is trauma influenced in some way.
Oh, yeah.
And like the main character, or it's sort of an analogy to a person's trauma. It's a personification. It's the horror movie version of trauma. And much like It Follows felt like it was an analogy to, I actually read something when that movie was coming out that they linked it to this idea of like sexual violence or even like sexually transmitted diseases. And like it made me feel like the director, Parker Finn, certainly was trying to say something more than only like having a horror movie. And he is using mental illness as like a conduit to his story, much like I think It Follows did.
Yeah.
Countdown's underrated, just by the way. It's very silly, but you might like it.
Which one's underrated?
Countdown?
It's like you're not going to text me and say, oh my God, this is the greatest movie ever. But you might, like, for the 85 minutes or however long it is, you might say, like, wow, that was like a very silly, nice time.
I'm definitely going to watch it. And I also love that you've seen it.
In total honesty, my social life before Laura was not great. So, so just being honest.
Yeah, you know, I think I kind of want to just take what Steve said and take it just a little bit further. And I feel like I fully see the comparison to movies like The Ring and It Follows. Just to talk structure for a minute, all those movies are about a protagonist who encounters something or experiences something or watches something, and then they are haunted by it for a set period of time before it ultimately, kind of like overtakes them and kills them, right? And so there's a real structure, there's a real similarity there. The thing that I feel like we're seeing with Smile is the way that structure and that trope gets filtered through the sort of art house horror Jordan Peele of it all. You know what I mean? Jordan Peele released Get Out, I think 2016. And then all of a sudden, every horror movie had to be about, like something else, right? It had to be like an allegory or something. It had to be they were just taken, I feel like, a lot more like intellectually seriously. And people also aimed to make movies that were like a little more that had more subtext to them. And so with Smile 2 and Smile, I've talked about this previously as something I actually don't like about it. Again, previewing, but not getting into critique. I feel like what they're doing here is taking the curse trope and being like, okay, how can we take this plot structure and turn it into like an art house or elevated horror thing. Maybe art house is the wrong word, right? It's not. It doesn't have indie vibes. It's got mainstream horror vibes for sure. But I do think they're trying to do something. They're trying to be brainier than other previous horror movies of the previous generation would try to be.
But I think It Follows, despite some things I don't love about It Follows, and I do like It Follows.
I like
I
it.
feel like that one, because of the STDs, like passing it on, like as one of the analysis of it, I do think it's trying to do something more. I mean, not with trauma, and that's the thing.
It Follows, I think, is part of. It Follows. Well, that was fairly recent. I mean, that's post Get Out. That's post. Like I think that it's in the tradition of the Curse plot, but it's also somewhat influenced by the sort of. I really don't want to say elevated horror, but I want to say elevated horror.
Yeah.
Thing.
Do you think so? Just in thinking about this, and part of this is through my lens with working in mental health.
Mm-hmm.
If the allegory is so obvious mental illness, which to me, I don't know how to watch Smile 1 and 2 without being like, oh, like he is taking parts of like this mental illness, this part.
Yeah.
If you're going to make an allegory that is so like on the nose, is so a part of the text, it's like it's not even subtext, it like is the text. Are you then responsible for the messaging, including the ending of the film, and to what that says about like what it is like to live with mental illness? Because that, I'll just being frank with all of you, that's one of the big issues with both of the movies that I have.
Yeah. Steve, you've happened upon exactly the reason. Well, one of the reasons. I also love you as an individual, but another big reason why I wanted to have you here, which is that you work in the mental health field. And so I actually had a fairly specific question I wanted to ask you specifically, as somebody who deals with this, right?
I hope I'm ready.
I hope you're ready. I don't know. So in order to ask this question, can I go on like a slight spiel? Can I
spiel away?
I promise not to do like I did with Scream, where I talked for like 40 minutes straight, and Jen was like falling asleep next to me.
No, I was awake.
You were awake. No. That's a critique of me, not a critique of you. With Smile 1, we had a very, as you mentioned, cut and dry, on the nose allegory for the cycle of trauma. Now it seems like the Smile monster has pivoted to become about addiction. And specifically, it's the idea that addiction warps your perception and controls your actions to me. So just to name some parts of the movie where I'm getting that idea from, right? Skye becomes infected with the Smile monster when she deceives her mom and her assistant and seeks out Vicodin, which is like easily imaginable, like a step towards relapse. She having had a drug problem in the past, of course. We're constantly reminded throughout this whole movie that she is craving drugs by the frequent, brutal water chugging that we have to watch over and over again, which she herself links to her addiction. And she also just like subsequently endures this self-created demise because of hallucinations and imagined scenarios that cause her to act in destructive ways. And one instance of that could be the moment where, with the teleprompter, where she gets up there at this charity event and the teleprompter tweaks on her and she sees her dead boyfriend, and it ends with her throwing grandma off the stage, right? Moving on from that, the shit I feel like really hits the fan with the groupie scare / dance scene. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes. Yeah. Where they're all in her hotel room. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like in that scene, we have a lot of like forced manipulation. They're turning her around. They're lifting her up. They're moving her body. I think importantly, the scare ends when the groupies enter her by going down her throat. Like that's where that scene ends, right? Which to me is all about consumption and relapse. And it's also a big turning point in the film as well. From there, she is suggested to have accidentally murdered her mother, stolen a gun, and consented to being put to death in an attempt to rid herself of the curse. And of course, like the ultimate manipulation there is perception, right? Nearly everything in the film is shown to be false. When Skye ends up back on stage, her mother is alive, and just about everything after her initial transgression at Lewis's apartment seems to have been fake, right? Or false in some way, a hallucination, everything pulling her strings, right? Overall, I feel like the movie is saying something very straightforwardly accepted about addiction, which is that it manipulates those who suffer from it like a basket of puppets, to quote Metallica. But I want to ask Steve and Jen, but also Steve, what do you think? What do you think about this jump in from trauma as the subject matter of the Smile series to addiction?
Jen, do you want to go first, or do you want me? Whatever's good for you.
Oh, I think you should go first.
Oh, sweet. This is like my time to shine.
You'll have a better answer.
So I do think that this is exactly in talking about the like Hollywood as a reflection of what is going on in the world. It honestly, you know what it kind of reminds me of is Mark Harris, who was an Entertainment Weekly writer for years and years, wrote this really two great books, but one of them was called The Five Who Came Back. And it was about five directors who came back from World War II and how that just like changed all of cinema. And so if you ever have a chance to read that, it's great. He also wrote this book called Pictures at a Revolution about 1967 and that year of the Oscars. So just a plug for those, because I love my movie books about as much as I love movies. The reason I'd give that as like a long tangent to enter into this is addiction is something that is really, really on our minds. It is in our consciousness. And so it really makes sense that a horror film that is seeking to be, I'll use the E word, if you will, that is seeking to be elevated would absolutely be focused on addiction. This is where I struggle with the movie's message as a whole. So before I worked at Colgate, I worked at a substance abuse outpatient clinic in Syracuse, where like people were really struggling and, you know, like what we would refer to as like searching for recovery, searching for sobriety, being engaged in the like recovery process. And I think that as filmmakers, they have a responsibility, if they're going to have a message, that it ends in a different way. And I know that like this does get right into the spoilers, but I think that it was disheartening for both of the films, that in a sense that because the movie had to have a sequel, that like the monster won. And I know that like we've lived an entire lifetime of horror movies having like, you know, I love all the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, the Scream movies, all of those things. I know that horror movies get sequelized in a way that like almost feels like no other genre does, except now we're going to have Captain America 27 at some point.
Right.
But I do wish that that was handled differently. In terms of if the message is going to be addiction, then does that mean that like she essentially like died of an accidental poisoning? Like, is that the one-to-one allegory? Like, I find it difficult sometimes, and I know this is maybe like a stronger opinion here, but I find it sometimes difficult to say, like, can you just pick and choose when it's a horror movie? And it's like, whoa, this is really cool. And like, I read something that the same woman that Alice Krems that worked on Aliens worked on this movie. So it's like, oh, that's such cool movie making. And then there's also this allegory. So it's like, how do you balance that? How do you turn that into what is referred to as like a dialectic thought, which is like two things can be equally true? And I do think that I just struggle with that a little bit. I hope that was the answer you're looking for.
I am not looking for any answer. I'm looking for your genuine reaction to these things.
No, I think that totally makes sense. And I think that it's one reason we were talking about elevated horror. I actually don't think this is elevated horror. I think it's kind of like basic mainstream gateway horror. I don't think it looks like elevated horror either. I think there's a lot of interesting visuals. I think the first one mostly does because it's more independent. I do think, though, here's the problem of style over substance. Yes, it has substance, but what is it saying? Like, are we meant to read it as drug addiction, or are we meant to read it as the monster is real? Because, like, that's the one thing with this is the monster supposed to be real. However, that gets super muddy in the Pizza Hut scene, where suddenly she like. I don't know. I have other issues with this. But
like
rules get really muddy. So it's like, what is real and what is not real?
Do you think, and this is just like, now I'm just thinking about this and I just love talking like this, I torture Laura with these one-sided conversations. Um, but do you think that the movie can be watched both ways? So there's this way of like, we're really looking at it and thinking about like, what does it mean? What does it say? And maybe this is because I've seen this now 3 times. Is there any way to watch this like without the like feeling like it's in allegory to something? Because some of these horror movies, I really feel like I just watch them and I'm like, that was really gory and scary. Whoa,
Yeah.
that was awesome. Like zombie movies, I really sometimes am just like, oh wow, like that was absolutely just like really gory and awesome. And I'm sure it means something more, but I'm not really thinking about it.
Yeah.
With these movies, it feels really hard to separate
Yeah.
what just feels like the text.
Yeah. I have really strong feelings on that. And I think that to try to read a movie like this, like Smile 2, as just like a fun pop horror film, I think that's just a straight on misreading. I think that you have ignored so much. You pointed out, right? It's not really subtext. It's like it's full on in the dialogue of the film that they're talking about this stuff. And I feel even more so Smile 1. So you know, I think some attempts to separate the like, I don't know, like just try to turn your brain off and not think of it in terms of these kind of real world issues, I think it's just kind of incorrect, honestly. Maybe I'm wrong about that.
No, I really just wanted to ask that because the third time I watched it, which is not a brag, it is a statement full of shame. I was like, am I just being too deep? Am I doing too much, as my students would say? Yeah. And it just felt to me like I don't know how to separate the text. It feels like there's a lot of other examples, and depending on how you watch The Matrix, I know there's a lot like, but it just feels like some of these movies, whether they are pop sensations or not, like it is the text, and it's almost impossible to watch the movie without understanding that the subtext is literally the text.
Right. And I think that's right. And there are different kinds of movies like that. Jen, go.
I thought it was a little too on the nose, actually.
Yeah, I really appreciate that.
Obvious. Like to an extent where I was like, I didn't find it interesting because it was like, what is that phrase? Like beating a dead horse? Is that it?
Yeah.
That sure sounds right.
I was just like, I don't know. There's a part at the end where she's literally fighting herself, and the demon version of her says, "You'll never escape who you truly are on the inside." Like, how much more on the nose? It feels like a teenager wrote that line and that whole thing.
This was not a subtle movie.
No, it's not.
Early in the film, when they're doing she hasn't even really broken down yet, and they're doing like a choreo practice. The song is "Doctor, I Need a New Brain," right? Like it's like, fucking, come on, man. Like, yeah. Like you're gonna tell me you're gonna ignore that and just say, no, it's a movie. It's just about it's a scary fucking demon smiley thing. Come on, man. So the last thing I wanted to say on my original question about the jump from trauma to addiction is I wondered if we weren't doing something a little bit reductive here, in saying that both of those experiences are kind of caused by the same monster, right? It's like it's all just the mental illness monster, right? They don't seem to really care about the distinctions between those two experiences. I don't know. And maybe I'm reading too deeply into it. Again, this is a thing that we seem to keep saying to each other, but I think it's an implication that's worth exploring. Cool. I have can I attempt one last thing with you all? And thank you for bearing with me. I'm going to attempt to do what I call a Mandy Goldman reading, which is when you try to take a character who's like obviously not the bad guy, but then you try to show them to be the bad guy. and I can hear her shouting "fuck you" at me from the future, from her house. This is a friend of ours, Steve. Sorry, inside joke.
For a second, I don't know who this is. Okay,
She's like, I have no idea what's going on. Yeah,
I was about to Google it. Like,
that was a joke for me and Jen and our 11 listeners. So, so when Sky is in the hospital after, the big dance scene, I'll call it, her mom like has this moment where she really like unloads on her. Sky says, you treat me like I'm some fucking wind up toy. You don't give a shit about me. Because her mom is like pushing her. All right, when can we get back to the tour? When can we get back to the prep and all that? So Sky says, you treat me like some fucking wind up toy. And Elizabeth, her mom, says, how dare you talk to me like that, you arrogant little asshole. I've given up everything for you, every second of my time, years of my life, my career, and here I am, sacrificing every fiber of my being to support you, but you're too selfish to even see it. You put everyone through absolute hell and we still support you. But you want to go and throw it away? Fine, do it. Throw it away. I don't care. That's what everyone expects of you anyway. And I want to just take a moment and ask, like, I think that throughout this movie, we're supposed to find Elizabeth, Sky's mom, disingenuous about her concern for Sky. Right? We're supposed to find her, I think, as like, kind of like a dance mom, right? Like really pushing her kid. But does she not have some points here, right? Is Sky maybe kind of awful? If you consider it from Elizabeth's perspective, she doesn't know that there's a smile monster. It just looks a lot like Sky is back on drugs, at the expense of everyone around her. Which, to be clear, she actually was trying to be back on drugs. So, like, I don't know. Is it worth considering that side?
So you're saying that Sky would be the bad one?
Is there a way to read this movie where Sky like is actually awful and like where her mom is correct in this? Maybe there's something to be gained by a reading of this movie that is not sympathetic to Sky.
Does it matter if that scene was real? When she gets, so if I'm remembering this right, and I hope I am, pretty soon after that, she kills her mother in her perception. Once again, perception. She kills her mom. She gets in the car with Gemma, played by Dylan Galua. I don't know how to pronounce her name. She's awesome. Shithouse was one of my favorite movies of the pandemic. But then it turns out that Gemma wasn't real. That didn't happen. So is it possible to read that scene with the possibility that it wasn't real and that was all the smile monster?
Yeah. Yes, I totally appreciate your answer, and I totally agree.
And I think that's correct. I think that it ultimately turns out to be the case.
Because that's why it's hard for me to figure out like how we're supposed to feel about Sky, other than honestly to feel bad for her. Mm-hmm. And to have empathy for her, because it feels like as much as the movie, and as much as Naomi Scott, as much as Sky is the entire center of the movie, the perception of the movie, what we see of her, a lot of it is through what the smile monster addiction is doing to her.
Right. No, that's fair. So suggesting that, I mean, maybe, that message is perhaps like a deception or something that's like aimed at Sky to in some kind of attempt to make her falter in her resolution that she's being treated unjustly by the people around her. Honestly, the only reason I asked that question is because I saw this one in the theaters, and when Elizabeth really digs down on that and says, how dare you talk to me like that, you arrogant little asshole. There was a heckler in the audience who just went, get her! And I first of all, it's fucking hilarious. And second of all, I was just like, I don't know, maybe that person is responding to some kind of genuine reaction about Sky's character. All right, that's all I had. That's all my analysis questions. Shall we critique?
Yes.
Sorry, I always.
And that's going to be the lead-in
I'm not even going to put music this time.
No,
I'm going to do that.
not.
Yeah, that's right. Who wants to go first?
I mean, Harry, you said you have a number ready.
I do. I do have a number ready. Fine. I'll go first. So I want to give this one, I'm going to give this a 5 out of 10. It is among my lowest ratings. I think that just to start off, some things for me, like Steve, I love everything you've said about the problematic nature of some of the messaging, and Jen, you too. You kind of both did like a really nice like badminton back and forth on that earlier, which I really appreciated. My critiques of this movie that knock it down a peg are really much more superficial. I think that this movie is about 30% too long. I think that it also, for me, gets too ridiculous. I can get down with a silly horror movie, a movie that like slowly grows and gets sillier. Something about the way this movie did it just didn't work for me. And for me, the silliness began at the point at which she throws the old lady off the stage. When I first saw that, I laughed. Like, I don't know, like that's just my like sick middle school sense of humor coming out, but like I did find that funny. I can't help it. And then it really explodes after she has killed her mother, and she steals a cop's gun and runs out into the street and with bare feet and immediately steps on a bottle. Like, what the fuck was that bottle about? Like, why? Except to be like a symbol of like alcoholism, but like, fuck it. Like that. No, it was stupid, right? Like, I also will say that a lot of the scary stuff that I saw in this movie, I feel like I saw 2 years ago. These are a lot of the highlight reel stuff that people have suggested in podcasts and reviews of this movie. I've seen elements of the dance scene, the dance scare in her apartment, on various YouTube channels in horror shorts, which I frequent. And again, stuff going back like years. And then similarly, the art design, when she's in another big part of this movie that really stuck out to me was when Skye is kind of fighting herself in the freezer, and she's being pinned down by her alternate self, and it says, "Look at me," and it's got these huge eyes. And that art design, I feel like I've also seen before, again, in like small time, independent, short form horror circulating on the internet. And so I just really think that this movie is the perfect combination of like way too long and actually not that original. That I'm at a 5, which means for me, I could not care less if it existed or didn't exist.
I totally agree with you on every point that you've made. And also, I didn't know that it had taken some things from like more independent short.
Maybe not. Maybe they came to them before, but the point for me, I guess, is that I had seen that shit before. So
no, you saw it before.
It just didn't work for me.
The eyes thing I definitely had seen before, and it even kind of reminded me of Large Marge from Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Oh, sure, yeah.
But there were other things that reminded me of too that I couldn't quite remember. I'm going real similar with yours, but I'm actually going to go even lower. And I'm going to give it a 4.5. Because I find the drug metaphor, addiction in horror movies to be boring and lazy. I also found that the fact that it was so heavy-handed in this movie, it wasn't even a metaphor anymore. Like that point where the dancers are there and the fist goes down her throat. She's getting fisted in the throat.
Yeah. I mean, who among us hasn't been there, right?
Yeah,
Sorry,
exactly.
continue.
It's like a Saturday afternoon. Then it cuts to black for like a few seconds, and suddenly, like you said, the rest of the movie is just off the rails.
Yeah.
I really thought the first half of the movie was way better than the second half, because the second time I watched it, I was like, is any of this real? Is it all in her fucking head? What is real and what is not real? And I love a surrealist movie. Like, if anyone knows, listening to this podcast, I like weird fucking shit. But I'm sorry, if you give me a movie that lends itself to explanation, and the last 30 minutes, I don't know what's real and not real. And I'm almost meant to be taking it as real because rules are still being given to me.
Right.
I don't care anymore.
Right.
And I thought when she fought herself, I was like, oh God, I hate this so much. This is so trite. I was like, the only thing that saved it for me was her acting. But then on the stage, when she screams, I was like, I laughed. Because I was like, this is terrible. And the monster looked way better in the first movie than it did the second one. And I think some of the problem with that is the CGI, because CGI looks better in shadows than it does on a bright fucking concert lit stage. I'm very heated about this movie after watching it the second time. So also, the other thing it did, which I was like, all these fucking movies are doing for no reason, is the 70s font in the beginning, where it does it says, what is this movie called?
Smile.
Oh my God. Wow. Smile 2. And I was like, ew, it looks like Long Legs.
It did look like Long Legs in the beginning.
Yes.
It was like the wintry scene and the sort of like heavy saturated font and you're totally right. That's super interesting.
Yeah, and I was like, is this what quote unquote elevated horror just wants to do 70s shit? So either way, I'm giving it a 4.5. I think that I liked how gory it was. I liked her acting. I think that it was kind of unoriginal in a lot of ways. And I think that I'm fine that it was made. And I think if you want a fun, mindless, you want something to watch while you're on your phone.
Right. That's the most damning thing I think I've ever heard. If you want something to watch while you're on your phone.
So I feel really, really like the both of you. I feel really mixed about this. There's a part of me that really, really likes Ray Nicholson, Kyle Gallner, obviously Naomi Scott, Dylan Galua, Peter Jacobson, for all you Ray Donovan fans. He played Morris. But I really struggle with this movie. And as you get to know me more, I really have a hard time giving a movie anything under like a 7, because I just feel like, people work so hard, and I don't know, but I'm just like a big softie. I don't know.
It's such a team effort,
Yeah, I don't know. Like some poor PA had to like get covered in blood for this. I don't know. I would give it a 6 just because I had such issues with how it ended, and what if it's the allegory. I think you have a responsibility to really fulfill the message and the hope that recovery can bring. And I think that if you make the choice to do, whether it is elevated horror or it is socially conscious horror, the Jordan Peele style of things, like however it gets referred to, I think if you're going to make a movie that has a message that is this on the nose, you have a responsibility to also show that like recovery is really possible. Yeah. And I was really, to be frank, like, and I'm sure Parker Finn's not going to lose sleep over this, but like I was very disappointed by the endings of both of his films. With that said, part of why I'm in that like 6-7 range is I would actually be really interested to see what he could do outside of his created world. And part of this is really cool that like this started as like his short film, and now he's gotten to make 2 Hollywood movies. That's really awesome. There is a part of me that's like, with going back to the first 5 minutes of this movie, which quite frankly, like 4 of the 7 points, if you will, stem from it, feels like, what is like a bank robber movie look like for him. And that was something that Sean Fennessy and Chris Ryan on The Big Picture talked about too, of like, what does an action movie from him look like? Is he like, is there another path where, because he does do some interesting stuff with production design, with where the camera goes, with how the movie looks. And so there were moments, but I just, overall, I think I was just so disappointed by if there is a message, then what his message was. I think that it really knocks it down. And Naomi Scott, I hope that this leads her to do 1,000 different things, because I think she's really awesome. And I think Kyle Gallner with like Strange Darling and Dinner for America, he's on a great run himself. I hope to see more of him in that. Dylan Galula, I just lightly mentioned her, but she was in Shithouse, which I don't know if either of you saw, which was it was like essentially like if Before Sunset was set at college, like it was just like a perfect hang movie. And so there's a really like a lot of talented, awesome people in this. And I hope they get to do more stuff that maybe isn't Smile. Like, I don't really care what happens in Smile 3, the big crux at the end of like, oh, what does this mean? I must admit, I'm not interested in like his view of like what community trauma looks like.
Yeah, agreed. I thought that, so Smile briefly came up when we talked about Longlegs, and I kind of didn't like the first Smile. I understood what drew people to it, but I felt it was like so heavy-handed, so on the nose. It was a horror movie on X topic of the week, which I still totally feel is happening in this. And I totally agree with you, Steve, that like wherever he goes from here, which by the way, I think it's already been confirmed that there's a Smile 3.
Yeah.
So like wherever he goes from here, it's going to have to be like, it feels like with Smile 2, he was following the philosophy of how can I make this bigger, right? How can I take this idea and make it a bigger scale? And I just am so uninterested in, I'm calling it now, Smile 3 is like a post-apocalypse story.
My greatest fear.
yeah. It's like a post-apocalypse story about the Smile monster. And it's like Resident Evil. It's going to go just way too long. Can I say one other thing that actually really ruined this movie for me? The Voss product placement. Every single time she slams a bottle of water, it's an enormous product placement for Voss water. And after the third time in the movie, I was like, I've fucking had it with this. I can't. It fully took me out of the scene to just have that happening. I don't know. Did it ruin it that way for you all as well, or was it just me?
I have to admit, I always think of Wayne's World when I think of these product placement things where Wayne is like, true. And here is like Pizza Hut. And so I really, whenever there's like I was watching a TV show called Ray Donovan, and they always showed the exterior shot of like a Mercedes doing like a really cool 360. And it's just like, oh my God, like enough. We get it. And with the water bottle is like, and the camera is like right on the water bottle. It's like,
right. It's like wondering center shot. It's like, right. So yeah,
this is a Voss water bottle. Yeah. So I'm completely with you on that. I just find that like kind of repulsive.
Sky Riley likes to keep her demons barely at bay with Voss water.
Yeah.
And you should too.
Can you imagine if that's actually like an ad? Because you know how apocalyptic movies sometimes have like weird like advertisement type things in them?
Yeah.
Might be coming.
I can see it now. Should we discuss the hottest in this film?
Yes. 100%, yeah.
So, Steve, we're going to play a game called Who's the Hottest? Okay. The game is to figure out who you think is the hottest.
And it could be anyone.
Anyone or anything I want to throw out there, too. I'm going to go first. And my answer to you is Gemma. And I'll tell you why. It's because there's a part where the Gemma, who we later understand is not actually Gemma, but Gemma picks up Sky Riley in a car as she stumbles out of a hospital having stolen a police person's gun. And Sky Riley says, "We have to go to Staten Island." And Gemma goes, "Ew, why?"
Oh my God, I love that that's the reason. Why?
Yeah, no, it was just it was hilarious, and the theater liked it as well. And no, I appreciated it as a moment of candid disgust for Staten Island.
I've seen her in a few things. Of course, I can't remember what they are. And I'm also going to pick Gemma.
Wow.
I think, because I've kind of always thought, I feel like that actress is hot.
Fair.
Yeah, I got nothing else.
We're 3 for 3.
No way.
Oh!
No, I swear. I
Universally
love her.
Acclaimed.
Yeah. Yep.
That's never happened on the podcast.
Well, I hate to break the trend, but yeah, I think she's the best. I love her in everything. She was also in the Her Smell with Elizabeth Moss. It was that and Shithouse, and then this, I think, are like the only things that I've seen of hers that I can think of off the top of my head. I think she's awesome. And if Laura's listening, I think Laura's the most beautiful girl in the whole wide world.
This is what happens in Who's the Hottest stays in Who's the Hottest. It's okay. The next game is this is called Armchair Filmmaker, and the idea here is if you could make one change, only one change to this movie for maximum improvement. It can be serious, it can be silly, it can be realistic, it can be totally outside of the laws of physics and reality, whatever you want. What would it be? How would you change the movie? And I think I have it. For me, anyway, just carve out some of this runtime. It's ridiculous. You just don't need it. You can drop the whole and it turns out it was all a dream bullshit, where she ends up back on stage and none of it has been for real. I don't know. I would just make major sweeping revisions to the final 30 minutes of this movie, I think.
I'm trying to come up with something slightly different from yours.
Yeah.
I think, okay, if I'm going to make one change, she would not be fighting herself.
At the end.
Yeah, that would not happen. Get rid of that. Even though the last 30 minutes need a lot of help, I'm just going to completely throw that in the trash.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm sure this is going to be obvious, but I'm going to spend more time with Kyle Gellner at the beginning. I think that if that was 15 minutes, or even just to spend, I guess really what I want to say is I'm far more critical tonight than I normally am. I would have liked to have seen a movie with the whole movie was about him. Yeah. And the third one, because there was obviously going to always be a third one, I guess, in this made up scenario where I have $1 billion to make a Hollywood movie, I would be to focus on Sky Riley, and this one to be about what is it like for a cop to have this curse, so to speak, I guess.
Sure.
Because I think that could play to even the director's strengths a little bit. And was that opening scene, was that the first time he tried to pass it on? I think that could have been interesting. Once again, the potential for repetitiveness could really exist. Kind of like the repetitiveness of me bringing up the first 5 minutes of the movie, I guess, to be really meta about it. But I would have. That's, I guess, what I would have liked to have seen.
I mean, I feel like the only other thing that I would do is just either keep it consistently. I'm just bothered by the switching from it being about trauma to being about addiction. I would either keep it as this billowing allegory about trauma that just keeps getting bigger and bigger, or just not make it about that. Just make it a fun, dumb, scary movie. Make it fucking The Ring. The Ring is The Ring has themes in it. Obviously, it's a story, but it's not. In my opinion, at least the way that I've seen it, it doesn't seem so overtly tied to hot button social issues. You know what I mean? Hot button health issues, social health issues.
Yeah, because you can have the pass it on trope without it being a social commentary movie.
Right. It's pass it on, but now we're doing it about, I don't know, gonorrhea. Actually, that's my change. It's going to be all about, well, then I guess I've just recreated It Follows, haven't I?
Mm-hmm. Which I did look up. It Follows was 2014.
2014. Oh, so it's a little bit predating it.
Mm-hmm. And it's predating Get Out.
It is, yeah. Well, maybe some of the wheels were in motion though before Get Out. But yeah, you're right though. I mean, if we're looking at Get Out as this like kind of big moment that flipped a lot of that stuff. All right, y'all. Anybody have any other things you want to bring up about this movie? Other thoughts, claims?
Yeah, but I do have a question for you, Harry.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh.
Because as I watched it, I was like, fuck, there are a fuck ton of jump scares.
Yeah.
I know how you feel about jump scares, and I just wanted to ask, how did this make you feel?
So let me just be clear. I am not afraid of jump scares. No, I just find that when they are overused in a movie, it makes me feel like I start laughing at them. I stop being afraid and I start laughing at them in a way that I don't want to be laughing. And this movie absolutely did that. And this is, a big part of what I was trying to get into with like the escalating ridiculousness of everything, where I stopped finding it thrilling and I started finding it funny in a way that wasn't really welcome to me. I wanted it to be scarier. I wanted to be more disturbed. It's not the most offensive movie in that way, as far as just like overuse of jump scares is concerned. But yeah, I did notice it. And it's one of these movies, it's one of the things, it's a hallmark of a movie that to me, sometimes it feels like there are jump scares because there isn't actually a whole lot else there to make me feel dread or terror or anything else of that nature. Thank you for asking, though.
Oh, yeah.
So our last thing we normally do is Steve, we normally make our guests give us a sound bite, any ridiculous noise sound. Some people will quote the movie, some people will do voices. One person just went bye just as the last thing that the good people will hear.
I think. Wait, I have something written down here because when you said this, I was like, oh shit, because I was like, Austin probably had some like cool sound or something, but I can't like do any of that.
What did Austin do? I'm trying to remember.
I feel like he did a Smeagol impression.
Yeah.
But I forget what he said.
He's very good at that. Okay, so I do have the final thing. Sorry, that took a second.
That's
Thank
all
God
good.
for editing. As Sky Riley would say, fuck the tour.
Nice. Fuck the tour, indeed.